My name is Wycla Bratton. I am from Kansas City, Missouri, and schools I went to. So, so I lived in South Central LA too. So that also includes part of my upbringing. And so I went to school in KC, and I went to school in LA. And so the schools that I went to in KC, I went to Pinkerton. I went to Milton Moore, Messervy, Satchel Page, Northeast Middle, Central High School. On the Kansas side of the dot, I went to Emerson, and then in LA, I went to Bethel Middle School, and then I went to Fremont High School. Um, and then as I'm saying this, I remember I went to school in Albuquerque, New Mexico. This was like a brief moment in time. This was a period where we were homeless. And I'll probably talk about that a little bit later. But yeah, those are the schools that I went to. And like, well, before I say that, shout out to all the youngins that's at those schools, man. Much love to y'all, anybody who's seeing this and attending those schools or have attended those schools. You know, shout out to y'all. Much love to y'all, and keep striving, keep grinding. But as you can see, I didn't start and finish at the same school in any of my K through 12 experience. Um, Even when I got my bachelor's degree, I didn't start and finish at the same school. I didn't start and finish at the same school until I got my master's degree. Granted, that's 2 years. You know what I'm saying? You online. Um, so while I was online, um, taking that, pursuing my master's degree. So, um, but yeah, that's still the first time I started and finished at the same school. So we know that there are things that happen in our community that don't serve us. Um, we know that there are things that happen in our community that are um, not positive. You know what I'm saying? And we're not oblivious to that. What's unsettling though is that the dominant narrative of our community is largely negative. Um, and when I reflect on that, um, one thing that I think about is not only do the people outside of the community accept this narrative as being true, um, because of who and where the story is coming from, that influence is so strong. But not only do the people from outside the community accept the narrative as true, but the people within the community start accepting the narrative as being true. And the thing with narratives is that, excuse me, is that narratives hold power. You know, um, especially when we start accepting them as being true, we start accepting them as being who we are. Um, and this is where we have to be mindful of how we label ourselves, and we have to be mindful of what we choose to answer to. And for me as a youngin, like for example, I the first time I heard the word minority used to describe us, I was like, I don't. It wasn't sitting well in my spirit. And the times that I heard it after that, like, you know, you're a minority, whatever, whatever. It was in this context or the sense of like you're lesser than, and I couldn't accept that because I didn't see myself as minor to anyone. I was like, we need to find another word to say there's less of us in this space, because I'm not about to be going around calling myself a minority. Because again, I'm not minor to anyone. But um, I say that to say like that's where this the story of Hood Nerd comes from because in my passion as an educator, I would engage in dialogue with my scholars, and we'd be chopping it up, and it will come up some way somehow in some of these conversations where they'll say things like, "Oh, that's ghetto, that's hood," or um, "I'm ghetto, I'm hood," or "I'm not ghetto, I'm not hood." Um, and I remember one day I just kind of like stopped and thought, and I just posed a question. I'm like, "Well, I'm hearing you say this. I'm hearing you say, this hood, this ghetto. Elaborate. Like, what does that mean? Like, tell me more about that. What do the people look like? Um, what does the community look like? Like, describe it. When you use this word in this way, what do you mean? Like, let's really like take a moment to think about it. And when they would share the description with me, it was like almost always highlighting exclusively like the worst parts of the community, the worst parts of the people, and I'd be listening, and I'm like, yo, for the ones that did come from the community, I'm listening, I'm looking at it, and I'm like, wow, like you this place that's shaping and influencing you, you see it in that manner, right? And so I would ask them, I'll pose the follow-up question. I'm like, all right, so do you see yourself in that way? And most times they say like, no, I don't see myself in that way based on the description that they share. It's like I don't see myself in that way. And I was like, all right, we need to pause here because if you don't see yourself that way, what this is showing is that you're regurgitating a narrative that you didn't even create. You just accepted it and accepted it as being true without really thinking about what you've chosen to accept. Um, and it's like if you don't see yourself in that way, for me at least, the way I was processing it was that this has to be a testament of the positive and the good that's present in the community, which there's a lot of, right? And so one of the um, part of the messaging of Hood Nerd and its purpose is for those of us that come from the community to have control over our narrative, um, and how we speak about where we come from, right? Because we have the power and control over that. We have the power and control over how we represent our communities. We have the power and control over pouring back into our communities. And again, it just kind of comes back to what's the narrative that we're going to choose to accept. Like we have the power and control. What are we going to choose to accept as being true? And again, there's stuff that happens that's negative, right? Um, and there's stuff that happens that's negative in other communities as well. And we also not gonna sit here and act like the things that are negative that have happened in our community haven't been influenced or a direct impact of systemic racism, right, and racist practices. And that's not to give away our power of what we can do. Um, but it is highlighting that some of what we're seeing is not something we just decided to create. There's a lot of history that gets left out or is not considered when certain things are shared about the community, and so I bring that up to highlight that as well. We got it. We have to acknowledge that, and we still have to get on one accord and change the narrative and just take ownership of our communities as well. And so when we tell our story, if we're gonna share the negative parts, tell the whole story too. Don't just leave it there. Like share the story of how much love and genius and beauty and intellect and happiness is also thriving in our communities as well. And no one knows that better than somebody from the community. They know, they see it, right? We see all of that present. you know. So it's very important for us to share the whole story and not just leave it at the negative things. Challenges that I faced growing up, I won't go into the long list. So I kind of be a little brief here, but low income household, so not having access to um, a lot of resources, opportunities. Um, when you're you're a child, it's only so much that's within your control. Um, and so education was something that I saw as um, being a vehicle that could help me. And I really didn't understand the seriousness of that until about like eighth or ninth grade. Um, and in saying education too, also highlighting that education is not just the time that one spends in a school building. And so yeah, but I also had the experience of being in um, foster care. I've had the experience of being homeless with my family, which are interesting times. um, I mentioned earlier wasn't much stability in my life, and I was bouncing between homes, staying with different family members and things like that. Um, and I didn't really get this like sense of stability into my adult years. Um, but when I think about some of those memories from what I shared, um, you know, we so this like I kind of talk about this piece of being homeless. We we moved from West Bluff, and my folks was looking to relocate, um, but we ended up being homeless. And we got multiple kids, in this van. We had this blue van, and like things that I remember is one night we had to sleep in the van under this bridge, and I remember waking up to this police officer tapping on the window, trying to wake us up. Um, I remember, and this was in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Like I mentioned, I went to school for a brief moment there, but this was in Albuquerque, and this is also where we stayed in this shelter for a little bit too. And they had like this gymnasium type space where we all slept on these cots. Um, and as a kid, it's like you looking at what's happening. It's like you in this big room with a bunch of strange people, and you're supposed to sleep comfortably, or at least as best you can. And I remember, that I remember in this period of being homeless, where my stepdad had to um, he had to humble himself a couple times, and once we didn't have much money for everybody to get their own meal, like very little money. And I remember him just going to a Burger King and seeing if they could help us out with some food. And they gave us like a couple Whoppers to split between all of us. Everybody to get their own meal, so we had to split the sandwiches and stuff like that. That was a moment he had to humble himself. There was another moment where he had to humble himself, where again, we're homeless, we don't have much money, um, and we're riding past this car show, a lot of fancy cars, people out and about, and I remember him pulling over, and like I'm just going to ask around and see if I can get help with some money. And so he leaves, parks the van, and leaves, and goes around. He's asking. And as the oldest child, I always had this like sense or feeling of responsibility to look out for the family. Um, Grew up kind of fast in that regard, and I remember we had this notebook and a pen in the car, and I wrote on the notebook something along the lines of like, "We need money" or something like that. And as I'm thinking about it now, like I always had these like feelings as a kid, when something's off, something not right. Um, I didn't always know how to respond to them, but I say that to say when I was writing the the message on the notebook, I knew I had this feeling my mom wasn't gonna be uh, supportive of that, and so I wrote it, kind of sneak slid it outside the window, and kind of like held it just by the door handle, so I'm like kind of looking away, but still looking, and I'm holding it, and I remember looking out and seeing people go by and they're reading the sign, they're looking at me reading the sign, and I just kept pushing and kept walking, and that was that was disheartening for me to experience as a child. Um, I think that's one of the things that contributed to me losing trust in people for a little minute. Because I'm like, nobody's gonna help us, so um, gotta help ourselves. I gotta help myself, Um, but I'm at a different level of understanding now as an adult. But as a child, that moment did a lot for me. And there was a couple moments too where we were trying to get support from people that was disheartening. But yeah, uh, but those are just some stories, though, man. I won't go too deep into many more of those. But I did have something happen to me when I was a child too that impacted me for years, dog. And what's crazy about all of it is that when you're a child going through it, you because you haven't experienced a lot of life yet, you just kind of take it as like this is normal. And it wasn't until I got around other people in later years that was like, dog, the stuff that you experienced wasn't normal. It wasn't ideal for a child to have to experience some of those things. Like a lot of right, we had joyous moments, we had positive moments and stuff like that, but there were some things that I experienced that definitely wasn't ideal. But in in all of that, like I said, what was in my control was you know how serious I took my education and my faith, as well, and just holding closely to those things. And so over time, um, that being the foundation of what has propelled pro- propelled me and helped me overcome a lot of those challenges and things that I experienced as a child. I definitely have I've seen how my experiences have shown up in my college experience and my professional experience. And I'll give a couple examples. So I mentioned earlier that I moved around a lot, right? And so when you're moving around a lot, going from school to school and stuff like that, um, I had to learn how to um, I had to learn how to adapt uh, and navigate spaces quickly because we're human. So what's important is that you have a sense of belonging. And you know, this experience that I had and being able to do that has helped me in college and professional world because there's I can go into just about any room and feel at ease because I had this like repetition of like meeting new people over and over again and introducing myself and learning about people and learning about different cultures and the different norms and things like that. So I've definitely seen that as a benefit while we weren't stable. Um, that experience has led me to establishing like some very awesome relationships. Um, there are some very beautiful people that I've been able to connect with and form, like I said, like really great relationships with. And so I am super grateful for that. My experiences have forced me to be very resilient, um, man. And that's not to say I didn't have moments where um, I didn't think about like giving up or quitting or anything like that. Um, but the resilience that came from my experience um, lit this like fire in me where when I had those moments, it was like you can't give up, you can't stop moving forward. Like you must move forward. And so um, I mentioned earlier about when I was holding the notebook out the window. Um, that sense of nobody's going to save me. I got to figure it out. Um, is something that came apart, that came with the development of my resilience, and in some ways, right, it's been a blessing, and then there also has been their cons to it as well, uh, because in trying to do everything on your own, it takes a toll on you, and so I'm still grateful for what I've gained in that regard, and there were some times in college that like I don't know if I'm gonna be able to see it through. There's even been some times in my professional career where it's like, yeah, I don't know, and that's where my experience hit me. Um, they come to mind in these moments because it's like you about to quit, like you've been homeless, you've been in foster care, you had the situation happen to you when you was a kid. All of those hardships are far beyond what you're experiencing right now. You know what I'm saying? And if you can make it through that, you can for sure make it through this, especially in God's hands. Um, and so when I'm having these moments of like this is rough, like my experience bring me back to help me understand what I actually am capable of. Um, and so I'm grateful for that. And when you come from where we come from, there's obstacles. There's reasons to justify giving up. Um, but if it's one thing that's true about our communities, like there's a drive there like no other. There's a hustle. You know what I'm saying? Um, and sometimes it's not used in the best ways, but it's there, and I'm grateful for that because we have so many examples of people who got it out the mud, and quite frankly, like it's just in our DNA at this point. Like, you look at the history, whatever's been thrown our way, we've been able to overcome. You know what I'm saying? We've been able to stand strong in spite of, and I've tapped into that more and more over time, and my understanding of that has grown stronger. And so, even in moments where it's like I'm gonna have to come back to it, so not giving up. I'm gonna have to just come back to it, but I still get after it, and that comes from my experience. And there were a couple things that in my childhood, like I mentioned earlier, faith and education, right? And so my grandpa uh, was a bishop, and you know, he would teach me, um, scripture and things like that. And um, there's a couple things that I'm like, ah, you know, he would teach me like the power of life and death is in the power of the tongue, right? So be mindful of how you speak. And I also remember him saying, know who you are and know whose you are. Um, and then had that gave me a different level of confidence as I grew to understand what he was teaching me more and more. And then, like I said, with education, just taking that seriously and understanding what that could do for me as an option. Um, and, and talking about education, I think the piece of that I've really appreciated is the education in which I've sought for myself. Um, and I think that level of education is the true definition of education, uh, being liberation. And so those are just some aspects of my experience growing up that has helped me in college and professional. Advice that I would give to somebody who comes from the same or similar community as myself. Um, First and foremost, like, don't undervalue your experience. Um, you may not have had the best experience. You may have experienced some rough things, but you've learned a lot, especially about life. Um, and this is a strength. Um, like, you have a perspective and a vantage point that others don't have, and it allows you to enhance spaces that you enter. Um, so definitely don't undervalue your experience. Like, understand the benefits and what you experience as well, even in those harsh times. Um, and because you experience so many things, you have resilience like no other, and you've been through far too much to let an assignment in class or a bad day or a bad interaction uh, to cripple you like that. That shouldn't be able to break you because you've been through much more than that. Um, and in a spiritual context, when we think about it, um, in the Bible, when a child was destined for greatness, right? What did the rulers of the day do? You know what I'm saying? They tried to kill all the babies. They tried to destroy the babies um, to ensure that they can prevent that greatness from happening. But they couldn't do it, right? They couldn't stop it. And I can't take credit for that revelation. Um, I was talking to a good brother. His name is Chris Thomas, and we chopping it up. I'm telling him about my experience, and he was just like, "You wouldn't have experienced all of that if you wasn't destined for greatness. That stuff that happened to you was to stop you from realizing your potential and your purpose on this earth." And that aligned with something that a mentor of mine, Julius B. Anthony, told me as well some years prior. So I'm seeing this like recurring um, theme that's coming up. And so I too want to share that message with any young person that's watching this right now, is to understand that you are destined for greatness. Right? The stuff that you're going through, you can't let it break you because you have something before you that's so powerful. Um, and the world needs that. Um, and so I just want to just take a moment to just share that because that was a powerful revelation for myself. Um, and on that note, like, also be yourself, dog. Like, just, I get it. We young, we trying to figure out our identity, who we want to associate ourselves with, how we want to represent ourselves. Like, I get it, right? There were things that I did in my youth, where it's like it didn't sit right in my spirit, and I did it anyway. And I think that's something that's like common for young people. Like we know, we have the sense of like this is not right, but we do it anyway, um, for the sake of trying to fit in, or do what is considered popular, or whatever may have you. Um, and just know, like, the more you go against that feeling, that tug of the spirit, the more that you go against that, the more you leave yourself open for destruction. You know, because like when I think about, like I said, when I think about myself, I did a lot of stuff to try to impress others, going against what I felt and my spirit wasn't right. And the thing about that is, like, the people that I was trying to impress, like when I think about it now, it's like they not even around no more for whatever reason, right? Or they may have just they got they got on a different path, right? The path that I got off of to try to follow and impress them. So it's like I did all that for what? You know what I'm saying? And so I say that to like be yourself, you know. Um, you can be the smart guy, you can be the nerd, you can love anime. I still think some of y'all was wilding with the Naruto run, but never mind. But no, for real, like I'm joking, but like for real, like be yourself. Um, no matter what that is. If you're the girl who's a wizard in STEM or STEAM, is what it is now. Be that. Like you don't have to play dumb or think that you have to emphasize, like, or concentrate on, or have this like this over concentration on how you look, and finding the value of who you are and how you look when there's so much more to you. Um, but yeah, man, like be not afraid, because being yourself um, adds value to the world. And everyone doesn't need to play into these stereotypes. No one really needs to play into these stereotypes. And there's a young man right now in school that is incredibly gifted, but he wants so desperately to fit in, and so he's not taking his work seriously. He's not taking his purpose seriously. He's not taking his gift seriously, and that's because what's most important to him is to do the things that he thinks um, others will see him as acceptable, or he's doing the things that he feels is going to allow him to be accepted by others. And they have yet to understand that um, those people that are supposed to be in their life, they're not looking for them to be the stereotype or to be something different. They appreciate you for just being you. Um, so be that, man. Like just be you. The people that's gonna rock with you, that's gonna love you, it's gonna be because you're being you, right? Um, shoot, man. And this is not to promote banging, but there's so many like nerd guys with like homies that bang. So it's like you trying to impress and trying to be tough and all this other stuff. Where it's just like, bro, they was gonna be cool with you if you was a nerd. Like, um, so just be yourself. Again, that's not to promote banging, but that's just the reality of the situation, man. Um, but lastly, dog, this life is not without challenges. Um, and so there are good things that happen to people that do evil, just like there's good things that happen to people that do good. There's evil things that happen to people that do evil, just like there's evil things that happen to people that do good. Like no one is exempt from either happening, right? So just know that whenever it's your turn to experience the good or experience the bad, right? Um, just know that there's something to come from that season. Um, and so don't get too high on yourself, but also don't get too low on yourself in those moments where things are challenging as well, because there is something to come from both sides. Um, but yeah, man. That's pretty much it. I'll leave it at that. Oh, and I will say, in these experiences that you learn from, if you keep experiencing the same thing over and over again, it's probably because you haven't learned your lesson. So learn the lesson so you can move forward. But yeah, I'll leave it at that. But my heart goes out to all the young folks, man. Just keep after it. Stay grounded. Just get better with each day. Love y'all, man.